Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Employer's Advantage discussion. Today's topic is effective collaboration in a remote environment. I'm Meghan Trout, Business Operations Manager for Employer's Advantage. Joining me today are HR business partners, Slane, Jessica Lorello, and the newest member of our team, TIffany Parker. So team, how do we achieve effective collaboration in a remote environment?
Good question, Megan. How
Thanks,
do we do
Jessica.
that?
How do we do that? We do it well.
I mean, Employer's Advantage is a completely remote environment. We do not have a central office where we can go and be together. We come to Zoom. That's our office where we can come and be together. I think there's a lot of other platforms that you can engage with. There's Teams, Zoom, Skype, if you want to take it back a few years. I don't know if Skype is still up and running.
I think so.
Is it? Okay.
Mhm.
I think you can also use Slack, whatever. We're not here to push products, but anyway, there are some platforms out there for you to use. And I think you just have to get creative in how you engage your team. You have to be intentional. So here's some buzzwords for you: creative, intentional. You have to understand the limits of remote work, virtual work. But also there's lots of pros to it, because I will tell you, I love working in my house. My commute's real short, and that motivates me.
So. Definitely. I always joked when I lived in Pennsylvania that I told my husband, I don't know if I would live in Pennsylvania if I wasn't able to work remotely. I did not want to go out to the frozen tundra every day in the wintertime.
Yes. And I think it comes down to like foundationally trust and transparency as well. Because in a collaborative environment, you really need to have that trust as your foundation. And in a remote work environment, I mean, there's less opportunities to see people, to read their body language. There's just a lot of differences that I think can lend themselves to making that trust and transparency and being intentional, like you said, Jessica, really important.
Trust and transparency. Yeah. I mean, there's nobody checking my computer and making sure that I'm doing the work I'm doing. As long as I'm doing my work and meeting my deadlines, we're good. And I would say, even for my clients that are remote, fully remote clients, they do the same thing, right? They are making sure that deadlines are being met, and employees' work is being done well to represent the company. But other than that, we're not keeping track. Don't keep track. Come on.
Don't keep track. That's icky. That's icky. I don't know another word for it.
Don't do that.
Yes. No spyware.
If you're scared to have a difficult conversation, call us. We can help you.
Yeah.
But don't track somebody because you're scared. Okay, I digress. Sorry, Ellen, go ahead. I know you have things to say.
No, you're fine. The only thing I was going to add is I think that makes sure that expectations are communicated, because there's different expectations of your remote workers versus those that are in-house. And again, there needs to be inclusivity, but still there is a difference, because you've got some from home and even some not from home if you do have a hybrid work environment. So I think just making sure that in any things that you're doing within the office, that you are including your remote employees as well, so that there is that feeling of we are a true team. So, but again, just to my earlier statement, just making sure that expectations are met. Because, those of us that are remote workers, we've got that flexibility. So if you can give them that flexibility, that's great. Because if they, do they have to start work right at 8 a.m.? Can there be a little flexibility because they are from home? Can they start at 9 o'clock, as long as the expectation is that they are working that full day?
There's also a lot of, I think, logistics to that. Like, I think if you think about a virtual work environment, like completely virtual, there's no home base, to a hybrid, right? Ellen, you were talking about hybrid, obviously, to like now an in office. Between virtual and hybrid, very different, like just across the board, and how you engage your employees and expectations and how they're communicated. So it's interesting that you bring that up, for sure.
Yeah. And I would just say make sure too to set up some fun things for your remote teams. I think that helps with collaboration when everybody's comfortable with each other and gets to know each other. Like we have a coffee break every week on Thursdays. You can join it. You don't have to. It's totally optional. But we only have one rule: no work talk. We try not to talk about work. It's just a nice way to get to know one another and continue to get to know one another and share things throughout the week.
Some of the topics we have for our coffee break are: share the last 3 things you Googled.
And no cheating, no cheating.
That was a funny one.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think too that's something else. That's another expectation, that, to communicate. Just because, like for example, we realize that all of our employees are virtual, are remote, so we are going to be doing these kinds of events and these kinds of virtual gatherings, so that there can be some collaboration outside of the office.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, just to that, like, communication's got to be the big thing. You've got to be communicating with your team, especially if they're hybrid. I mean, especially if they're remote.
Mm-hmm.
And just, doing those and checking in with them. We have biweekly check-ins. And again, it kind of depends on what their role is and what you're doing. So if you need to check in with them on a weekly basis, that's great. Make sure you set that. Make sure you're intentional about setting that in your calendar. And, that's something that you're doing every week. And then, if it needs to progress to something biweekly, I think biweekly is long enough to go without checking in. Of course, there can be check-ins as often, but the intentional ones on the calendar where you're reviewing work, expectations, performance, that kind of thing, at a minimum, biweekly, especially if you have a new employee, and especially
Yes.
those that are, new to perhaps working in a remote environment, making sure that you're having those intentional check-ins with them.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would just add to that in addition to the check-ins, leveraging the tools that are available through things like Slack or Zoom, Microsoft Teams, just to make sure that there's regular communication on a daily basis in between the check-ins, and just those touch points. Because when you're in a remote environment, one of the biggest differences, of course, is just that you're not seeing each other. You're not running by each other in the break room or at the water cooler, chatting about this, that, or the other that came up. Those are the moments that really matter when it comes to being on projects together or working together on a team. It's the conversations in between the meetings that are important as well. So I just wanted to mention that too, because I think that's a great point, Ellen, around having that regular cadence and then also having those touch points in between as well.
I think, if you're in a full remote environment, it might be worth looking into sort of a mentor program. So we have work buddies where we can reach out to our work buddy if we need a question answered, help with something, and they cover us while we're on vacation. So we cover each other. But also what that is essentially doing is creating a mentor program, right? So we are connecting someone, an HR business partner, with another HR business partner within Employers Advantage, and that is the person that you can connect with on a regular basis. You can also, as a supervisor, as a business owner, have the expectation be that the employee reach out to their colleagues to learn about them. It is important to me, but also helpful for me to know the strengths of my colleagues. What are you good at? So, and what areas do you like to participate in so that I can engage you in that if I need help with anything. And some people you might just have a personal relationship with more than others, and that's okay too. The other thing too is, as you engage with your colleagues or people within the company, to ask what their strengths are, what they like to do. How do you like to communicate best? I have some colleagues that communicate best via a Slack call. Some people prefer Slack conversation. Some people prefer a text message. Some people prefer a phone call. So if you can know that about them, how to best engage with them, that will help that virtual work environment sort of flow on its own.
And to that, I think it speaks to how less emotionally tied in virtual and remote employees are now to their company, because like to what you said, Tiffany, there are no more like those water cooler conversations. There's no more of that person to person, contact, getting very close with having that work buddy, and, getting very close with the people that you're, sitting in an office with or a cubicle with, day in and day out. So now with people that are leaving companies, there's so much less emotions dealing with it because they're not as emotionally connected to the company, because there's less of that connection with their coworkers. So that's why I think keeping that connection is so important. And to what Meghan said, planning events, if you can work to have, there's a lot of platforms that are out there that allow you to do like virtual networking events, like with all of your coworkers, whether it's like, flower arranging or like a wine tasting event, or charcuterie boards. Those are all great ways to really sort of bring everybody together, remotely, but still together, and kind of see everybody outside of work. And I had one client where they were doing a virtual happy hour, and we made everybody grab their pets so that we could all kind of like see everybody's pets. And kind of, it's so funny when you bring like a dog or a cat into the picture, like how somebody's persona just completely changes. And there's just, when you get to see those different sides of them. So, and it also opens the door for more conversations. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And this also is, you might have to get flexible with it if you have employees in different time zones, or, in different states, different countries even. You might have to get a little creative, but, certainly think outside the box, certainly Google something. There are so many ideas out there. I was actually just brainstorming with one of my clients. They're celebrating their 2-year anniversary, and they are going to put together a little trivia about the company, and they're going to send it out to all of their locations, and they're going to give them each a budget, and they're all going to have a happy hour at a time that is a happy hour for them, right? Like it might be 5 p.m. here, but 8 a.m. somewhere else. And they can all have their own happy hour, participate in the trivia, and then they're all going to come back and report back about how it went and talk about some highlights. And so I think that's great too. You might not be able to all collaborate virtually at the same time in that way, but they're all having their own celebration and then coming back to as a whole at a time that works, even if it's 7 a.m.
It goes back to being creative and intentional.
And just because one thing doesn't work, don't give up. I mean, keep trying different things. You'll find what works best for your team. And keep going.
Well, and ask the team, if you're if you're kind of running out of ideas, engage your team and be like, what are some fun things that you all would like to do? Because again, they may have some great suggestions of things that you might not have even thought of.
And like if we want to talk about an employee engagement survey, then you can probably also get some ideas about other things too. We can help you with that too.
Thanks,
so we're up
Jessica.
to employee engagement surveys and difficult conversations. We can help you.
We can.